you're probably going to want to watch this one, because if you're a simulator fan, a hunting fan, a walking sim fan, or even just a fan of stealth games, Way of the Hunter is something unique. I've been shooting at things all my life in the woods, and you will notice I said shooting and not killing. That's because it's called hunting. If it was always successful, it would be winning. So when games aim for this and truly hit it, they're a special type. They're one of the most pure stealth-style games ever. Way of the Hunter is coming down the high-caliber barrel into an August not exactly flush with game. How does this game work? Is it special? Yeah. Way of the Hunter might be the best hunting simulator and gives the massive Hunter Call of the Wild a run for its money. It has its issues, but if they had called it Way of the Hunter Simulator, it would have been 100% accurate. As always, if a developer gives me a code, I buy the game and give it away to somebody who watches, comments, or somebody in the Patreon. So stay tuned for that. Subscribe to the channel if you want more reviews, as well as walk in the walk technical videos. So this game starts out fast. It has you getting a hand-me-down land reserve from family and it becoming the instant owner of a hunting lodge, a massive open world area that's both shockingly well thought out and designed. It's also one of the best looking games, at times at least, this year. You start out taking small jobs in the tutorial, like driving around, shooting at a shooting range, exploring, and filling out a recipe or two at small out-of-the-way restaurants that want fresh food from your reserve. But let's just get this out of the way right from the start. The story is a bit, well, it's weird as hell. Your grandpa's in the hospital. He's worried that mad deer disease will ruin his business. So the plan is for you to bring popularity back to hunting. But here's the thing. Pretty much you can ignore that if you want to. The faster you get to driving around the game world and hunting, the better, though. Driving is one way to get to new places, and some of those new ones unlock fast travel as well. And because this isn't a shooting gallery, I do want to talk about travel a bit, especially driving. As most kids remember, that trip in an open-top Jeep rapidly damaging your eardrums as you careen across the top of a trail made for mountain bikes, then getting home and getting in trouble because you couldn't hear a damn thing your dad said the entire time. Well, it's pretty much aptly in this title. The car that you drive around in, whether it's one of the Jeeps that you start with or you get and switch around, is very, very loud. It's almost noxiously loud. However, anybody who has driven in those type of vehicles knows that's actually what they sound like. I bring that up simply because a lot of people are going to notice that right away, but for the most part, you actually aren't in that. It's a little bit like traveling inside a Ted Nugent concert for 3 hours. I didn't find myself using it very much, except for driving to particular locations and opening up those actual hunting areas. Let's talk about just traveling on foot, though. This is somewhat the same way. Noise is reduced by kneeling or crawling, and your fastest sprint is like carrying a 50-pound pork dump. But the thing that each hunting game does differently is how you move around, how big the world is, and how the animals react. And Way of the Hunter is definitely on the simulator side. Every hunting game has a unique feel. For example, Cabela's. They've vacillated between hyper-realistic on old consoles and their original hunting games to the feeling like you're a rooster tailing around the back 40, stopping just long enough to combo kill 11 elk in a 4-minute period, like a ballistic guile working out the newbies in Street Fighter. So Way of the Hunter had to aim for something that was a little bit different. And this is noticeable in two ways: the spawning systems and the locations. They are massive and some of the best looking spots in a game I've ever seen. It consistently looks to be a subtle blend of using tools as well as a lot of hands-on, seeing 3 mountains away with a scope and then finding out there's a cabin even farther along and hoofing it for hours across the world is awesome, if you like that kind of stuff. Way of the Hunter has no problem making sure that you're going to learn the things that it wants you to learn along the way. For example, finding out that each kind of animal has both sleep locations and relaxation locations, but also it needs locations for grazing. Where they are, where they're going to move, and where they will be all depends on the time of day, if they frequent it often, and if they've been spooked recently. But it goes far beyond that. The game actually tracks what you hunt and then adjusts the herd's health accordingly. For example, if you shoot the stronger, younger bucks, you can end up with a different and smaller or larger sized animal herd as the game continues to simulate that out. While hunting animals, you have different weapons unlocked when you get cash from turning them into trophies. The game tracks overkills as well. That's a point of using a weapon far beyond the means of the animal. And I get it that some people don't like to hurt animals, but you're not. Just like when you mowed down 30 dudes in Arma 3, the same happens here. It is just a game. And the game actually handles this very well, pushing the idea of never using a cannon on a ground thumper. And so far, sadly, I haven't had any like 5-point bucks carrying a howitzer to shoot back at me. If that happens, I will show it in the review. That means that it's not just about finding the animal and shooting it. It's actually about hunting and understanding your weaponry. And I think this might be the gold standard now. It's not just the animal patterns, the way they react when you spook them, many times actually running so far away that pushing a herd, which is a very real thing in real life, becomes such a problem you really do have to adjust. Also, in the larger areas, you do have to buy or get authorization from people in the local area to hunt there, many of them having you do small jobs for them or hunting down a particular animal and that kind of stuff. And that also means you don't want to push those animals into those locations because you can't hunt them. So you have to continue to use that stealth. This is a game that thinks easy mode is a 3-hour thigh chafe from crawling up straight embankments. I think I'm in love. And the reason why, and one of the best parts of Way of the Hunter, is this. In Call of the Wild, the reserves could feel like Hamburger Helper of hunting parlors. Sometimes it felt like the game's spawn system was mimicking bombs in World War II against German offenses. And then other times, it would be surprisingly lackluster. But Way of the Hunter is all about actually hunting and finding the animals. And yes, that does mean walking for 20 or 30 minutes without seeing an animal. It means that tracking the wind current, taking your dirty balls and wafting their aroma across a herd is going to result in them disappearing like four-legged ghosts. You're always watching. It also doesn't mean that you won't fast travel a location and see some animals there. That can happen, but there's a far more realistic tint to this title that just ended up grabbing me. Getting a good shot and tracking down the animals is one of the most satisfying experiences in a hunting game ever. But it's not just the stealth-based gameplay that you're noticing. You can also, if you want, stuff them and throw them in a spot in your house using taxidermy. Finding the money for a new gun, which changes the way you may hunt, but not only the locations. It also might allow for you to get to a spot that's pretty open and difficult to not flush animals out. And that natural and rewarding feeling of being able to take a shot, fight the bullet drop, the windage with a higher caliber, and ace a 4-point when doing so before was especially difficult feels perfect. And you're going to actually pick up real skills in the game that are offset by the game skills it actually gives you. You will actually learn a number of things about the way animals move and how they behave. If you don't feel like spraying yourself down with elk urine and running 3 miles in real life, you can pretty much do that here. Not only that, but the game tracks a huge number of stats and unlocks some passively given to you slight bonuses to things like stealth, but never a huge amount, meaning you as the player actually have to get good on your own. Using things like vision breaks, backtracking, and thinking on your feet to hunt that more wily animal, and older ones do seem to have a higher ability to see, hear, or sense you. And just like in real herds, you'll have various different animals that are consistently looking out while the others graze. It's amazing. I like hunting games, and I know they're not for everybody, and I get that, but the number of people I've found that have used hunting games to move into stealth games or come away way more interested in slower-paced games is countless. And as a massive hunting fan, Way of the Hunter is one of the best simulators there is, which, again, we're seeing a huge boon to the simulator market already. Also, if you absolutely cannot stand shooting animals, the game has a full photo mode, and I spent more than about 6 hours just running around taking pictures. But I do want to stress this. It does mean you can truck around for a very long time and not see a creature. The locations are massive. They're stunning, huge, gorgeous. It hits as many of the hunting game tropes and systems that you would want. And it also has a multiplayer if you want to invent a friend or invite one into the game. There are a couple issues here, and it comes with presentation though. Firstly, graphics, as I said, gorgeous. The draw distance is insane, and for the most part, this has one of the longest draw distances in a video game that is also matched up with image stability. You will sometimes see flashing textures very, very far off here or there, or a lower res one, or some rocks floating around, but they are actually in the distinct minority. What you do get is a game that actually lets you scope out animals thousands of yards away, through bushes, trees, and across 2 mountain ranges, and then trucking after them, and that's exactly what a hunting game needs. Sadly, it does need some patching up in one other place, and that's that the game reduces frame rate on smaller creatures very far away. We've seen this FPS sparing device in AAA titles such as Halo and others where far-off creatures run at a lower FPS. Strangely, though, the first time you fire crawl over the top of a hill and scope out an animal, it looks like it's crawling out of a TV in the movie The Ring is a bit disconcerting. The main issue here is that while the game does run okay, it has a huge number of graphical settings that you can adjust, but it suffers from some loading stutters that occur when walking or driving. You might go 10 minutes and nothing, and then all of a sudden it's at like 12 FPS for 10 seconds. Then it doesn't happen again for 20 minutes. It's very odd, and nothing I could do could completely stop it from happening. If you set all the settings on the lowest, you could get it to be less pronounced and the duration shorter, but it was always there. And when you change the vegetation setting in the entire world, it just loses vegetation, like God mowed everything down for a period of time before loading in. This was fine for me. I didn't like that it happened, but you shouldn't really be in there changing that a ton. But when it did happen, and we've seen it happen in other games, technically this could be used in this particular title to find animals easier, though that's a really nasty way of doing it. Also, when crouching, the game is animating so that if another player's watching, it'll look more realistic, but as the player sometimes moves around, you'll see a knee popping into view. And when crawling, the secondary weapon can flash into the screen over your shoulder, which doesn't really look right. I would love to see them just patch that up a little bit and figure out exactly how to get that out of there. Driving can also get you some noticeable pop in some spots, but since the Jeep's top speed is like old grandma with a bad hip, it's not necessarily soul crushing. And luckily, either is the sound. Hunting games really have to have their audio locked in. For example, Hunter Call of the Wild still has the gloriously helpful bug where animal sounds can sometimes sound like they're right in front of you and you find out they're 200 yards away. That never seemed to happen in Way of the Hunter. No matter how far away the creature, or how clear it was, how close they were, it was always clear and close when they were, or far away when they were far away. Like when you're next to a brook, you can actually hear the water hitting the rocks, or the huge amount of animal and insect samples buzzing around you. As someone who is used to that and been on multiple day hunting trips, it felt like absolute home. I will mention that when a ton of wind is blowing, there's a little bit of a sound that almost sounds like compression in that sample. When it comes to voice, surprisingly, there are a number of voices in the game, from the main story being told between the main character and the person who gave him the reserve, and otherwise, the main character's okay, but a bit stilted. However, the relative that gives you the location and announces each new place you find is actually performed really well. Another category that shouldn't help it and isn't really there that much is music. There's a bit in the basic start screens and the option screens and various other points when they announce a location, but you're not going to hear a lot of it. Having a dose of EDM music thumping in the background like the movie Collateral would make it much harder to hear that deer shitting in the woods 10 feet away anyway. So I'm fine with this. And the audio sounds, again, are good enough to fill that spot. But has everything come together well enough to continue to make all of this fun? I get it. In any genre, not every game is going to be for everyone. But with the almost insane genre explosion here happening in the simulator kind of sphere, if you want something hardcore, this is the game. There's still some gamified moments like the skill system, but this game is now solidly in my simulator library and it will probably never go away. I enjoyed everything. Love tracking the animals. I love the stealth. It's just exciting to actually realize that things matter, which sounds are actually going to spook creatures and which aren't. But in a world where people are spending hours power washing the rims of a fire truck in a game, I don't think it's that alien to be excited about a hunting one. Simulator games, whether you're shucking bales of hay or hunting down prize elk or introductions into things in life you may not get a chance to do. And Way of the Hunter is just like that. It's aptly named in that way. And you do get hunter vision, which is like a concentration mode, or Vietnam vision as we saw in Mafia 3 and pretty much any other game. That's sort of a game conceit for gamers who find titles like this a little bit more difficult. But that's not actually going to help you get close enough to an animal to get the right gun, the distance, taking on the windage, and your own man-musk possibly betraying you. Fun is exactly what I had in this title, and it is a simulation title of hunting that is such a big boon to add to the library. So as you guys know, I rate games on a buy, wait for a sell, rent, or never touch it again rating system. As you can tell, I think this is well worth getting. It's got some graphical issues, no crashes, but it did have some bugs. It had a gorgeous world that at times had some problems here or there. And just the way this game actually has you looking at things in a slightly different way, even though we've seen it in titles like Hunter Call of the Wild, something about this title in particular seems to really ace it even more. And that might be because of the excellent spawning system and how you understand herding and strength of the animal herds themselves and what you do that can actually offset that. So that's it for me. I hope you guys liked this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. Maybe a thumbs up anyway. Subscribe to the channel. I'm going to be doing a ton more reviews. Some indie games, some big games are coming up. You'll see coverage on those, and a new Walking the Walk is coming. What is a Walking the Walk? It's basically like this game, except no shooting. I walk through a game world, usually in an open world, such as Ubisoft's titles or Ghost of Tsushima, those kind of things, and explain the game design that went into it, usually taking information from game developers and otherwise. I would love for you to join up to watch those as well, and check out the Patreon. YouTube is a disaster. CPM's at an all-time low, and you guys know me, I don't do sponsors. Discord, Patreon, that is quite literally what runs the channel and helps me continue to make you guys videos that aren't 2 minutes long or filled with sponsored bullshit. Peace out and enjoy the rest of your week.